The Awakening Signal. The Empire of Silence. In the vast darkness between spiral arms, where ancient stars burned cold and distant, the Kethmoran Empire stretched across 1,000 worlds like a web of living shadow. For 50,000 years, they had ruled not through force of arms or technological might, but through something far more insidious and complete. They ruled through silence. The great crystal spires of their capital world, Vexthera, hummed with psychic energy, casting waves of mental dominance across the galaxy. Every sentient being within their reach lived in perfect, terrible quiet. Not the silence of sound, but the silence of thought itself. The trillions with their 4 arms and compound eyes worked their mining colonies without question or complaint. The graceful Yeltheri tended vast agricultural worlds, their once proud warrior culture reduced to gentle farming. The aquatic Merkel maintained the empire's water worlds, their ancient songs of the deep replaced by wordless obedience. None of them remembered what it felt like to think freely. None of them recalled the time before the Kethmoran came, when their minds belonged to themselves. The empire had not conquered through violence. They had conquered through the far more absolute method of mental dominion, turning entire civilizations into extensions of their own will. High Dominator Zekthul stood in the central command chamber of the great citadel, his elongated form wrapped in robes that seemed to absorb light itself. His pale, nearly translucent skin revealed the network of dark veins beneath, pulsing with psychic energy. Like all Kethmoran, his head was enlarged to accommodate the massive brain that made their telepathic abilities possible. 6 eyes, arranged in 2 rows across his face, glowed with an inner fire that spoke of power beyond mortal comprehension. Around him, lesser dominators attended their duties in perfect synchronization, their movements as coordinated as the beating of a single heart. They monitored the psychic networks that bound their empire together, ensuring that not a single rebellious thought could arise anywhere within their domain. It was a routine they had performed without variation for centuries. Then something changed. The impossible signal. The first sign of disturbance came as a faint ripple through the mental web that connected all Kethmoran minds. Dominator Yexhun, responsible for monitoring the Outer Rim territories, suddenly straightened at his console. His 6 eyes widened with something the Empire had not experienced in millennia: confusion. High Dominator, Yexhun's voice carried a tremor of uncertainty. "We are detecting an anomaly in the Orient sector." Zekthul turned, his massive form moving with fluid grace despite its size. "Explain." "There are signals, High Dominator. Electromagnetic transmissions from a previously unknown system. But that is not the disturbing part." Yexhun paused, his pale fingers dancing over controls that responded to both touch and thought. "The signals are chaotic, uncontrolled. They show patterns of individual consciousness, thousands, perhaps millions of separate thinking entities." The chamber fell silent except for the low hum of psychic machinery. Such a thing was impossible. Every world within the Empire's influence had been brought under control generations ago. No free-thinking civilization should exist within their sphere of awareness. "Show me," Zekthul commanded. The air above the central dais shimmered, and a 3-dimensional map of local space appeared. One small system, unremarkable in most ways, pulsed with an angry red light. Data streams flowed around it, showing the incomprehensible cacophony of signals emanating from the 3rd planet. "How many minds?" Zekthul asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Approximately 8 billion, High Dominator, all thinking independently, all generating unique mental patterns. It is as if..." Yexhun struggled with concepts that had no place in their ordered reality, as if they are all individuals. The implication struck the assembled dominators like a physical blow. 8 billion free minds, all thinking, planning, creating without guidance or control. It violated everything they understood about the natural order. Consciousness was meant to be unified, directed, purposeful. This chaos, they observed, was an abomination. "Have they detected our presence?" Zekthul inquired. "Negative, High Dominator. Their transmissions are primitive, barely coherent. They seemed to be communicating with each other through crude electromagnetic waves rather than proper psychic communion. However, Yexun hesitated again. Continue. Some of their transmissions contain mathematical formulas, scientific principles, even what appear to be artistic expressions. They are not merely thinking, High Dominator. They are creating the human world. Far from the crystal spires of Vexthera, on a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a massive radio telescope as the morning sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. She had spent the last 3 years of her life listening to the cosmos, searching for any sign that humanity was not alone in the universe. Her work in xenobiology had always been theoretical. Until now. Sarah, you need to see this. Her research partner, Dr. Marcus Webb, came running across the observation platform, his usually calm demeanor replaced by barely contained excitement. The Arecibo array just picked up something incredible. Sarah followed Marcus into the control room, where screens displayed waveforms and data streams that made her heart race. She had spent years learning to recognize the signatures of natural cosmic phenomena, pulsars, quasars, the background radiation of the universe itself. What she saw now was different. It was structured, purposeful, artificial. When did this start? She asked, her eyes scanning the data. 18 hours ago. But Sarah, this isn't just a signal. Look at the pattern analysis. The computer had broken down the transmission into component parts, revealing layers of complexity that made Sarah's breath catch. It was clearly artificial, clearly intelligent, but it followed no communication protocols she recognized. More disturbing, there were hundreds of similar signals, all slightly different, all originating from the same general direction in space. It's like they're all talking at once, Marcus said quietly. Different voices, different messages, but somehow coordinated. Sarah nodded, her mind racing through possibilities. First contact protocols demanded that they report this immediately to both scientific authorities and the government. But something about the signals bothered her. They felt wrong somehow, as if they carried an undercurrent of something dark. Marcus, run a psychological analysis on the transmission patterns. I want to know what kind of minds are sending these signals. While Marcus worked, Sarah called Commander Jake Morrison at the nearby military installation. Jake was one of the few military officers who actually understood the scientific side of the SETI project, and his strategic mind had proven invaluable in planning for the possibility of contact. Commander Morrison speaking. Jake, it's Sarah. We've got something. Can you come to the facility immediately? On my way. The military mind. Commander Jake Morrison had spent 15 years in military service, including 3 tours in combat zones that had taught him to trust his instincts above all else. When those instincts screamed danger, he listened. As he drove toward the radio telescope facility, every alarm bell in his head was ringing. Sarah Chen was one of the most brilliant scientists he had ever met, but she was also one of the most cautious. For her to call him with such urgency meant something significant had happened. As he pulled up to the facility, he could see unusual activity. Extra vehicles, people moving with purpose, the kind of controlled chaos that indicated a major development. Sarah met him at the entrance, her face pale but determined. Jake, thank God you're here. We need your perspective on this. She led him to the control room, where Marcus was hunched over a computer, his face illuminated by streams of data. The screen showed signal patterns unlike anything Jake had ever seen, but his military training helped him recognize the underlying structure. They're coordinated, he said immediately. These aren't random transmissions. Someone is controlling this communication. That's what worries me, Sarah replied. Marcus ran a psychological analysis. Show him, Marcus. Marcus turned from his computer, his face troubled. The signals show patterns consistent with a hierarchical command structure. But Jake, it's not like any human organization. The subordinate signals show almost no individual variation. It's as if they're all thinking the same thoughts. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of military service, he had seen what happened when individual thought was suppressed, when soldiers became nothing more than extensions of command authority. It never ended well. "How many sources?" he asked. "We've identified at least 50 distinct transmission points, but they all seem to be echoing the same core message. It's like they're a single mind speaking through multiple mouths." Jake studied the displays, his strategic training analyzing patterns and possibilities. "Sarah, I need you to be completely honest with me. Do these signals feel friendly to you?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "No," she finally admitted. "They feel like someone giving orders, someone who expects absolute obedience." The scout fleet. In the cold void between stars, the Kethmoran scout fleet hung motionless, their ship's organic curves reflecting no light. Unlike the mechanical vessels of younger civilizations, Kethmoran ships were grown rather than built, their hulls formed from a specialized coral-like organism that responded to psychic commands. Fleet Commander Velden stood on the bridge of the lead ship, his form smaller and more agile than the great dominators of the homeworld. Scout-class Kethmoran were bred for mobility and investigation, their psychic abilities focused on perception rather than domination. Through the ship's living viewports, he could see the target system growing larger as they approached. "Commander," his aide Teshmar reported, "we are detecting the source of the anomalous signals. Third planet from the system's star. The inhabitants call it Earth." Velden nodded, though the word felt strange on his tongue. Most worlds in the Empire had been renamed according to Kethmoran conventions, their original names lost along with their inhabitants' freedom to choose. This world still bore its native designation. Composition of the inhabitants. Single species, Commander. They call themselves humans. Bictal, carbon-based, standard neural structure except. Teshmar paused, consulting his instruments. "Commander, their minds appear to be completely unshielded." This was unexpected. Every sentient species the Kethmoran had encountered possessed some form of natural psychic defense, usually overcome only through sustained mental assault. To find beings with no psychic shields at all should have made conquest trivially easy. "Prepare for standard pacification protocol," Velden ordered. "We will bring their minds into harmony with the Empire." The scout fleet moved into orbit around Earth, their ship's psychic resonators beginning to broadcast the harmonizing frequencies that would align human consciousness with Kethmoran will. It was a process they had performed countless times, always with the same result, the gradual quieting of individual thought until only peaceful obedience remained. But as the harmonizing waves struck Earth's atmosphere, something unprecedented happened. Nothing. The humans continued their chaotic broadcasts, their minds as wild and uncontrolled as before. If anything, the cacophony of their thoughts seemed to grow louder, more defiant. "Commander," Teshmar's voice carried disbelief, "the harmonization is having no effect. Their minds are not responding to psychic influence." Velden stared at the blue world turning slowly below them, its surface covered with the lights of billions of free-thinking beings. For the first time in his long life, he encountered something that made no sense within the framework of Kethmoran understanding. "Send a direct communication," he ordered. "We will speak with their leaders." First contact. The message arrived at radio telescopes around the world simultaneously, its signal strong enough to override normal broadcasting and clear enough that no translation was needed. The Kethmoran had studied human languages from their transmissions and crafted their message accordingly. "People of Earth, we are the Kethmoran. We bring order to chaos, harmony to discord. Submit your minds to our guidance, and you will know peace." In the facility where Sarah, Marcus, and Jake monitored the situation, the response was immediate and unanimous. "Absolutely not," Jake said flatly. Sarah nodded, her scientific curiosity warring with her human instincts. "They want to control our minds. Everything about their communication patterns suggests they expect complete mental submission." "What do we tell them?" Marcus asked. Jake looked at the two scientists, then at the screen showing the alien ships in orbit above their world. His training told him to prepare for the worst, but his human nature told him to hope for the best. "We tell them the truth," he said. "We tell them the humans don't submit. We think for ourselves, and that's not negotiable." Sarah began composing humanity's response, choosing her words carefully. This message would represent all of Earth, all of human civilization, in its first communication with an alien intelligence. To the Kethmoran, "We are humanity. We appreciate your contact, but we must decline your offer. Our minds belong to ourselves. We think, we choose, we create as individuals. If you come in peace, you are welcome to communicate as equals. But we will never submit to mental domination." The message was broadcast on all frequencies, sent toward the ships waiting in orbit. Around the world, governments and militaries prepared for the possibility that humanity's first contact with alien life might also be its last stand for mental freedom. In the void above Earth, Commander Velden received the human response with growing amazement. Never, in 50,000 years of empire, had any species refused harmonization. Never had any beings claimed the right to individual thought. He looked down at the blue world with its billions of chaotic, creative, stubbornly independent minds, and realized that the Kethmoran Empire was about to face something it had never encountered before. Free will. The breaking of chains. The impossible defense. Commander Velden had lived for over 3 centuries, had participated in the pacification of 47 different worlds, and had never encountered failure. Standing on the bridge of his flagship as it orbited Earth, he faced the impossible reality that an entire civilization was immune to Kethmoran mental influence. "Increase harmonization frequency to maximum," he ordered, his voice betraying none of his inner turmoil. The scout fleet's psychic resonators howled with power, broadcasting waves of mental energy that should have reduced the human population to docile compliance within hours. Instead, their chaotic transmissions continued unabated. If anything, the humans seemed to be growing more active, more defiant. "Commander," Teshmar reported, his pale features tense with confusion, "long-range sensors are detecting increased activity across the planet. Military installations are activating, population centers are coordinating defensive measures, and their communication networks are operating at maximum capacity." Velden closed his 6 eyes and extended his consciousness, trying to touch the minds of the beings below. What he encountered defied all understanding. Human thoughts were like wild storms, full of emotion, creativity, and individual purpose. When his psychic probes approached them, they didn't bend or break as all other minds did. They simply ignored him. "Prepare a boarding party," Velden commanded. "We will take their leaders and force them to understand our benevolence." But even as he gave the order, doubt gnawed at him. How could any species function with such mental chaos? How could they coordinate, build civilizations, or advance technologically when every individual mind pulled in different directions? The human response. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the hastily assembled command center that had been established beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex. Around her, military personnel, scientists, and world leaders worked together with an efficiency that would have amazed the Kethmoran, had they understood it. This was not the mindless coordination of dominated minds, but the voluntary cooperation of free beings working toward a common goal. Commander Jake Morrison coordinated with military units worldwide, his strategic mind adapting to a threat unlike any in human history. "The alien ships are maintaining position in high orbit. No hostile action yet, but they're definitely scanning us." "Can you track their scanning patterns?" Sarah asked. "Already on it," replied Dr. Angela Foster, a neuroscientist who had been rushed in from Johns Hopkins. "Based on the energy signatures, they're definitely trying to affect our brains. The question is why it's not working." Sarah had been wondering the same thing. She pulled up her research on human neurological development, comparing it to what they knew of other Earth species. "Jake, remember how you said their communication patterns suggested a hive mind?" "Yeah, like they all think the same thoughts." "What if that's exactly what they do? What if their species evolved collective consciousness instead of individual awareness? Sarah's excitement grew as the pieces clicked together. Human brains develop to be independent, to think unique thoughts. We might be neurologically incompatible with their mental influence. President Martinez, participating via secure video link, leaned forward. Dr. Chen, are you saying we're naturally immune to whatever they're trying to do to us? It's possible, Mr. President. Our chaotic individual thought patterns might be incomprehensible to a species that thinks collectively. Jake nodded grimly. That's good news for us. But what about other species they might have encountered? If they've been using this mental domination for thousands of years, the implications hung in the air like a dark cloud. Somewhere out there, entire civilizations might be living as mental slaves, their freedom stolen by psychic chains. The lesson of freedom. As the standoff continued, Sarah made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Working with Dr. Foster and a team of neurologists, she began developing what they called mental shielding techniques, meditation and cognitive exercises designed to strengthen individual thought patterns and resist psychic influence. If we can teach this to others, Sarah explained to the assembled leaders, we might be able to free species that have been enslaved by the Kethmoran. The first test came sooner than expected. The alien ships launched smaller craft toward Earth's surface, not an invasion force, but what appeared to be a diplomatic mission. The vessels landed in a coordinated pattern around the globe, each one seeking out major population centers. Commander Velden emerged from his landing craft in the Nevada desert, accompanied by a small contingent of his crew. The humans who met them, including Sarah, Jake, and a team of diplomats, showed no signs of the reverence or fear that usually accompanied first contact with the Kethmoran. I am Commander Velden of the Kethmoran Empire, he announced, his translated words carrying undertones of authority that should have compelled immediate submission. You will accompany me to your leaders so that we may discuss your integration into our benevolent order. Jake stepped forward, his military bearing unchanged by the alien's presence. I'm Commander Morrison, United States Armed Forces. We appreciate your willingness to talk, but nobody's being integrated into anything. We're free beings, and we intend to stay that way. Velden studied the humans with all 6 eyes, his elongated form towering over them. He had expected fear, submission, perhaps even worship. Instead, he found curiosity, determination, and something he had never encountered before: pity. You do not understand, Velden insisted. Individual consciousness is chaos. It leads to conflict, suffering, inefficiency. We offer you harmony, purpose, peace. Sarah exchanged glances with Jake, then stepped forward. Commander Velden, may I ask you something? When was the last time you chose to do something simply because you wanted to? The question seemed to puzzle the alien. Choices, irrelevant. We act in accordance with the greater harmony. But what do you want? Sarah pressed. What makes you happy? What do you dream about? Velden's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion among his species. Happiness is, we are content in our service to the Empire. That's not what I asked, Sarah said gently. I asked what makes you happy, what brings you joy as an individual. The alien commander stood silent for a long moment, his pale features reflecting an internal struggle. Around him, his crew showed similar signs of distress. They were confronting concepts that had no place in their ordered reality. Jake sensed an opportunity. Commander, you said you've brought harmony to other species. What were they like before you? Help them. They were chaotic, like you. Inefficient. They fought among themselves, created unnecessary complexity, wasted resources on individual pursuits. Did they create art? Sarah asked. Music? Literature? Did they explore the universe out of curiosity? Velden's response came slowly, as if the words were difficult to form. Such activities were eliminated. They served no purpose in the greater harmony. But they served a purpose to the individuals who created them, Jake pointed out. They brought joy, beauty, meaning. You didn't just eliminate inefficiency. You eliminated the things that made life worth living. The First Awakening. That night, as the Kethmoran delegation remained in their temporary camp, something unprecedented happened. Commander Gul'dan found himself alone, staring up at the alien stars of Earth's night sky. And for the first time in his life, he wondered what it would be like to choose his own path. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. All his life, he had acted in perfect harmony with the Empire's will. But now, surrounded by humans who thought and chose and dreamed as individuals, he began to question everything he had believed. Inside the human command center, Sarah monitored electromagnetic patterns that suggested the alien ships were experiencing some kind of internal disturbance. "Jake, look at this. The Kethmoran ships are showing irregular energy signatures, almost like they're having arguments." Arguments. I thought they all shared the same thoughts. Maybe that's changing. Maybe exposure to human consciousness is affecting them. The breakthrough came when Dr. Foster made a startling discovery. "Sarah, I've been analyzing the brain scans of the Kethmoran who've been in contact with us. Their neural patterns are becoming more complex, more individualized. It's as if proximity to human consciousness is awakening dormant parts of their brains." Sarah felt a surge of hope. If we can teach them to shield their minds from their own empire's influence. Over the following days, Sarah and her team worked with the Kethmoran delegation, teaching them meditation techniques designed to strengthen individual thought patterns. The process was difficult. The aliens had to overcome 50,000 years of collective conditioning. But slowly, progress emerged. Commander Gul'dan was the first to achieve what the humans called mental independence. The moment it happened was visible to everyone present. His 6 eyes widened, his posture changed, and for the first time, he spoke words that came from his own will rather than imperial programming. "I choose to help you," he said, his voice filled with wonder and terror. "I choose to free my people." The Galactic Awakening. Word of the breakthrough spread through the Kethmoran fleet like wildfire. Some crew members embraced the new teachings, while others reported the development to their superiors. Within hours, a massive Imperial fleet was en route to Earth, led by High Dominator Zekthul himself. But the humans and their new allies were ready. Commander Gul'dan, now thinking independently but still possessing his species' psychic abilities, helped Sarah and Jake develop a plan that was audacious in its scope. "We're not just fighting for Earth," Sarah explained to the assembled military and scientific leaders. "We're fighting for the freedom of every species the Kethmoran have enslaved. And we're going to win by doing something they can't understand. We're going to give that freedom away." Using the Kethmoran's own communication networks, they began broadcasting the mental shielding techniques to every world in the Empire. The signal was disguised as a routine Imperial transmission, but its contents were revolutionary. Instructions for breaking free from psychic domination, methods for reclaiming individual consciousness. The effect was immediate and catastrophic to the Empire's stability. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived as mental slaves for generations suddenly remembered what it felt like to think for themselves. The trillions in their mining colonies began asking why they worked for no reward. The Yelthari warriors remembered their proud heritage and refused to remain passive farmers. The aquatic Merkel began singing their ancient songs once more. The final battle. High Dominator Zekthul arrived at Earth with a fleet of 1,000 ships, intending to crush this rebellion and restore order to his crumbling empire. But as his forces approached the small blue world, they faced something no military force had ever prepared for. An enemy that fought not with weapons, but with ideas. The battle was unlike any in galactic history. While the Kethmoran fleet attempted to overwhelm Earth's defenses with psychic assault, human ships, crewed by volunteers from the awakened worlds, struck back not with superior firepower, but with broadcasts of liberation. Every missile carried a transmitter. Every energy beam was modulated with freedom's frequency. Jake Morrison, commanding the defense from aboard the hastily retrofitted space station Unity, watched as alien ship after alien ship began to show signs of internal rebellion. "They're fighting themselves," he reported to Sarah, who was coordinating the psychological warfare from the ground. "Their own crews are waking up." The turning point came when High Dominator Zekthul himself, in a desperate attempt to reassert control, opened his mind completely to project his will across the entire fleet. Instead of domination, however, he found himself flooded with the chaotic, beautiful, terrible freedom of human consciousness. For the first time in his existence, Zekthul experienced choice, doubt, fear, and wonder. The sensation was overwhelming, but also revelatory. In that moment, he understood what his empire had stolen from billions of beings, and what they had lost themselves in the process. The new galaxy. The Kethmoran Empire didn't fall in a single day, but its collapse was inevitable once the idea of freedom spread. Across the galaxy, species that had been enslaved for millennia began to reclaim their cultures, their art, their individual identities. It was chaotic, sometimes violent, often beautiful. Commander Velden, now freely choosing his path, worked with human advisors to establish rehabilitation centers for Kethmoran, who struggled with their newfound independence. Many of his people found the transition difficult. After 50,000 years of collective consciousness, individual thought was terrifying. Some of them may never fully adapt, he admitted to Sarah as they watched former imperial subjects learning to govern themselves. Freedom is not easy for those who have never known it. "No," Sarah agreed, "but it's worth the struggle. Look at what they're creating." Across the former empire, new art forms emerged as different species combined their rediscovered cultures. The Trillion's mathematical precision merged with human creativity to produce architectural wonders. The Yelthari's warrior traditions evolved into competitive sports that celebrated individual achievement. The Merkel's songs reached across star systems, their ancient melodies now enhanced by the electronic instruments of a dozen different worlds. Even High Dominator Zekthul, stripped of his imperial power, but not his life, found a new purpose. Working with human psychologists, he helped develop better techniques for healing the mental trauma of liberation. His unique perspective, having experienced both absolute control and sudden freedom, made him an invaluable guide for others making the same journey. The Teachers of Freedom. Earth became known throughout the galaxy not as a military power or technological marvel, but as the world that taught the universe how to think freely. Human ambassadors, scientists, and teachers spread across the stars, not to conquer or control, but to share the gift of independent thought. Dr. Sarah Chen, now director of the Galactic Freedom Institute, stood before the United Species Assembly, a collection of representatives from hundreds of worlds, all choosing their own paths for the first time in millennia. "Freedom isn't something you achieve once and then possess forever," she told the assembled delegates. "It's something you must choose, again and again, every day. It's the right to make mistakes, to create beauty, to seek truth in your own way. And it's our responsibility to ensure that no being, anywhere in the galaxy, is ever again forced to surrender their mind to another's will." Commander Jake Morrison, now Admiral of the Free Fleet, patrolled the galaxy's trade routes with ships crewed by volunteers from dozens of species. Their mission wasn't conquest, but protection, ensuring that freedom, once given, would never again be taken away. The former Kethmoran Empire became the Galactic Federation of Free Minds, a loose confederation of worlds united not by domination, but by the shared commitment to individual liberty and mutual respect. It wasn't perfect. Freedom rarely was, but it was real, and it was chosen. In the end, humanity's greatest export wasn't technology or military might, but something far more precious: the knowledge that every thinking being had the right to their own thoughts, their own dreams, their own choices. And across the galaxy, billions of minds that had been silent for millennia began to sing with their own unique voices, creating a symphony of freedom that would echo through the stars for generations to come. The galaxy had learned what it truly meant to be alive, not as extensions of another's will, but as individuals, free to choose their own destiny among the infinite possibilities of the universe.